Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 191. Today on the podcast, Jen discusses the value of expanding your experience by saying yes. I totally agree. You know, I didn't end up on a beach in Tahiti wearing a dress and singing a duet of Live and Let Die with Paul McCartney by saying, hypothetically, or let me get back to you on that.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Recently, I got together with a posse of high school friends to go out for dinner and to attend an outdoor summer concert with a band called Abracadabra, an ABBA tribute band. We had an absolute blast dancing at the front of the stage for 3 hours, like we were 17 again instead of 51. I tell you, my feet were killing me the next day. There was more laughing and more hilarity going on than I think any of us had had in a long time. One of the women had to go home a little bit early because she was going on a really long hike with a friend the next day. And while this doesn't sound unusual, for her it was, because you see, she's not a hiker. And when we asked why she was doing this rather challenging sounding hike as a first hike, she told us that she had decided to try something new. And that by new, she didn't mean hiking exactly. She meant she was saying yes to things that people invited her to do on purpose. It was a new experiment for her. For the next while, what she was going to do was say yes to everything that came along that she possibly could say yes to, even when her initial reaction would be to say no, or to have a bunch of questions, or to be afraid, or to be anxious. She also said that while it was challenging and a bit scary for her, it was exciting too, and she was having all these amazing adventures because she had decided, for a certain amount of time, to say yes to everything that came along. Well, today's episode is just that, saying yes and expanding your experience, saying yes more often. And I'm going to let you in on the biggest career benefit of trying this new practice out, if you dare, right after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
The biggest career benefit of saying yes, even when you initially have no idea how not to say no, is this: opportunity. And yeah, I know that might be an obvious answer, but a quote from hockey legend Wayne Gretzky comes to mind, and he said this: "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." When you say yes in your career, even if you have no idea how you're going to accomplish what it is that you've been asked to do, and of course, I'm saying this all with the caveat that you don't do anything dangerous or ethically questionable, that this is saying yes to things that are possible and legal and all the rest of it. When you say yes, you open yourself and your career up to expansion. You can figure out how exactly to fulfill that yes later. The act of saying yes first is you taking a shot on goal. It might not go in, and yet it might. Our minds are really good at keeping us safe. That's the job of the brain, of course. So often when we're asked to do something that sounds a little more than we were expecting, or when we're asked to do something that feels scary or has never occurred to us before, the brain might be excited at first, might be initially looking forward to the possibility, and then immediately it begins to offer reasons why we should say no instead. Has this happened to you? You think something is a fantastic idea at first, and then doubt creeps in, rational thought and excuses and justifications and questions about your ability and your worthiness begin to bubble up. How can you possibly think that you can do that? Or aren't there so many more qualified people who could be doing this than me? Why did you ask me? What makes you so sure that you can do this? Maybe you better wait and see. That's your mind talking, right? So it's all these things that bubble up, that question and poke at your confidence and try to unravel the hope that you could do this thing that you've been asked to do. Well, if you understand that the job of the brain is to keep you safe, and if you understand that and you're able to see that, then lots of times you can still say yes, and you can convince that overprotective mind of yours later that you are up for the challenge, as long, again, as it's not something that will truly put you in some kind of danger. Consider this. If someone thinks enough of you to ask you to do something in the first place, then it means they see something in you that maybe you don't see yet. There's a reason that you're being asked, right? Somebody is believing in you and believing enough in your abilities and your skills and your capability to step up and ask you to do something that requires a yes. And so there's a reason that you are being asked, and you might not actually see that reason quite yet. I was asked about 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago actually, to chair the governing body of an organization I'm involved with, and honestly, I was completely taken aback. Firstly, because I hadn't been part of that group for very long at all. It felt like I'd been there for 10 minutes, and suddenly they're asking me to be the chair of it. And secondly, because administration and policy and procedure and Robert's rules and all that governing stuff, that is not my cup of tea. In fact, when I was a student minister in one of my internships, one of my field placements, one of my learning goals was to get more comfortable with administrative duties, specifically because I didn't like them, because I didn't want to have to know how to write policy or read a manual and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I could read it and anyone could read it, but to fully comprehend it and to understand it, all that legalese, that just isn't my thing. So my initial reaction when I was asked to be chair about 3.5 years ago almost was to say no and to run for the hills. I didn't though. I was able to ask the person who was asking me if I could delay giving them an answer for a few days. And that gave me time to go home and ponder the request. And in my practice to pray about it, but that's my practice. So to go home, to talk to people at home about it, to ponder it, to really discern whether or not I should say yes. And in the end, after, a few days after the person said, yeah, you can get back to me by Friday or whatever, in the end I said yes. But I said yes, really feeling out of my depth and wondering what the heck just happened and how did I get myself into this. But since then, I have learned a whole lot, and I'm able to feel that I know what's going on in the organization, and I'm able to feel part of the decision making. And it's been really, really good. My term was even renewed after the first 2 years and will be ending this coming December instead of when it was supposed to end, which was more than a year ago. But I can say that I'm glad that I said yes to the person who obviously saw something in me that I had never considered, that I could do it. And this person asked me, and I said yes. So remember that if someone asks you to do something, especially something big, there's a reason they're asking. And they might see something in you that you don't even know is there yet. And they believe in you, which is no small thing. How else can saying yes expand your experience? Well, saying yes opens more doors than saying no does. Now, I must say that there are times when saying no is really important and when it's a good practice, especially if you're overloaded and you're stretched too thin, and it can be really hard to say no to something fun and something good. It can be more difficult to say no to that than to something you really don't want to do. I'm not recommending in this episode that you say yes to every single thing that comes your way, unless you're doing what my high school friend was doing as an experiment for a very short amount of time and for a concentrated and life-changing expansion. That's different. But there are times when saying no is the best course of action. What I'm suggesting, though, is that before you automatically default to turning something down, I'm suggesting that you think about what doors might open for you in the future if you say yes. Take a moment right now and think back to a time in your life where you took that chance and you said yes to something that led to something great. Think about that. There must be a time in your life where you said yes to something. It doesn't have to be career related, but you said yes to something that led to opportunity and that ultimately led to where you are now. What would life be like had you said no? What if you had closed that door and not done what you'd been asked to do? It's a bit sobering if you think about that. You could easily have said no to whatever it was, and your life might be completely different than it is now. I got into teaching because I said yes. A nurse that my mother used to work with, my mom was a nurse also, a nurse that my mother used to work with taught medical terminology at night school in continuing education at a local college, and for some reason was unable to teach one of the nights in an entire program that she had. She had a conflict. There was something else she needed to do, and she had one night that she needed somebody else to come and fill in, and so she was desperately looking around for someone to fill in for her, and she called my mom, who didn't want to do it. And my mom said, "Wait a minute, I'll call Jen." So Mom called me, and at the time, I was working in the hospital. I was about 8 months pregnant with my son. I had a toddler at home. I had lots going on. I was familiar with the medical system because I'd been working in it for a number of years. But for some reason, for some unknown reason to me at the time, this opportunity, although it terrified me, sounded like a good one, and I said yes. And then I spent a lot of time the next few days and weeks studying the material that this nurse gave me. We got together and we met, and she gave me the stuff, and I spent hours preparing. And I remember that night so well in the classroom. It was in the fall, and it was dark. It got dark early, and it was raining, and I had to drive for about 30 minutes to get to the place the class was held in. And I was super nervous about the whole thing and feeling really large and cumbersome. And the funny thing is, the topic that I had to teach that night, you'll never guess, was the reproductive system. So here's me, the substitute teacher, massive baby belly, coming in to teach them for 3 hours. Well, I tried my best not to blush through all the medical body part names, which makes me laugh hilariously now because, a couple decades later, I have no problem saying the medical names of body parts like penis or vulva or whatever. Medical words, right? No problem. But I was blushing and embarrassed, which was funny when I think about it now. And I also found, to my horror, that I had completed all of the material I needed to cover in about 2/3 of the time of the class in about 2 hours, and I probably had about an hour left before they were supposed to be dismissed, and I didn't know what to do next. I had zipped through it all and gotten through everything that I'd been given to do with them, and I went way too fast. So I very soon learned that I didn't need to speed through, and that storytelling and listening to stories from students and having them ask more questions and me asking them questions is how to deepen learning and how to build knowledge. And nowadays, 3 hours is a breeze. And actually, 3 hours is usually not enough time for all of the activities and the fun that I plan if I'm doing a workshop or a class. But my very first time, I really had no idea. I hadn't taught an adult education class before. I probably hadn't taught any kind of class before, except when I was camp counseling with children, years before. So I was learning right along with the students that night. The thing is, though, if I had said no to that opportunity, I would not have been invited to the next term by the nurse to just take over teaching the whole program on a regular basis. She had decided she wanted to teach on the topic of diabetes, and she had been teaching medical terminology for a long time, didn't want to do it anymore, and so she found out how to pass the whole program over to me. And I took on teaching medical terminology at that college on a regular basis, evenings and weekends. And had I said no, I would not have had that door open and that opportunity. I would also not then have gone back to school to get my diploma, my college instructor's diploma, to be able to teach. This is what's required to teach in the colleges for college instructors in most institutions, and that a diploma. If I had said no, I would not have that diploma, and having that diploma led me to teach for 9 years at another university in my own town. After I had finished teaching and done a lot of teaching of medical terminology, I was invited to teach at another college and to teach a larger program in the healthcare field. And after 9 years of doing that, another college invited me to go downtown and teach for them. And so one yes led to another yes, led to more than 23 years of classroom experience, a whole lot of education with all the training and certification I took. And to this day, I am now taking contracts as a corporate trainer for a big EAP company. I'm teaching my own online classes here at Careers by Jen. I go out and lead workshops and seminars for other organizations through my own company. And actually, I might be back teaching at one of those colleges again in the near future. So not to mention how much I love to run education programs when I can in the church that I serve on a part-time basis. So one yes back in 1993 opened literally a lifetime of doors. One yes. All of that to say that you just don't know where your yes today might lead. We're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, I want to talk about a couple of side benefits of saying yes that might just surprise you. Back in a moment. Do you want someone to listen? Do you need help setting goals for yourself? Do you want someone to keep you accountable for your progress and to ask good questions that will help to move you toward your success? Have you got a resume that you want reviewed or updated? Do you need help deciding what kind of work you'd like to transition into? If any of these sound like you, I've got some coaching spaces open at Careers by Jen, and I would be happy to work with you to achieve your goals. From a single session resume review to multi-session career or life coaching, there are several packages to choose from. Go to careersbyjen.com, click on online programs, and you will see the coaching packages on the courses page. Select your package and let's get started on your future today. We're back, and today I'm talking about saying yes and expanding your experience. Aside from opportunity and more doors opening and the recognition that your initial default towards saying no is a safety feature that your brain is equipped with, there are a couple of benefits that come with saying yes that might surprise you. The first one is that saying yes can lead you to have more confidence. Now, maybe not at first. Remember me running out of things to teach and still having an hour or so left of a class to go. I didn't feel confident then at all. I felt completely ill-equipped. I felt like an imposter, which is totally normal. However, the next time I taught, I knew what to expect, and I told a story or two, and I asked some good questions that students had to consider, and I brought more activities to the evening than I needed in case I had to fill up some time. So in other words, I learned. And as I learned, I became more confident in my own ability to manage the time and to answer the questions that students asked and to deal with classroom dynamics and on and on and on. Now, I'm completely in my element in a classroom or in front of a workshop of people or on a stage or in a pulpit or behind a microphone, especially if I'm helping people to open up and discover what they themselves are capable of. That's super exciting to me. That is the most exciting thing about teaching, is watching that spark in somebody grow into a flame and light that person up with their own confidence. And that is just it. That's the best thing. And so that's why I do this podcast, right? This podcast is a labor of love, and it's because I'm hoping to help people gain that confidence to step out and do things in more successful ways for themselves. And so a side benefit of saying yes is that in time, your confidence in your abilities will grow, and you will prove to yourself as well as to other people, but importantly, you will prove to yourself that you can do it. So that is one side effect of saying yes that might be something you don't think of immediately. The second surprising side benefit is an increase in self-worth. And I'm not talking about ego here, although it likes to pop in and make itself known, but I'm talking about how you feel about yourself when you accomplish something and succeed. It's a boost. When you have more confidence and more self-worth, well, then life is a little more pleasant, isn't it? It's easier to feel content in your own skin if you have some confidence about your abilities and your knowledge and your capabilities, and when you feel worthy. If you don't say yes and you don't give the thing, whatever it is you've been asked to do, a chance, then you will never know. And someone once told me that regret is a wicked ghost, and I believe it. Saying yes often leads to the development of new skills. And that's what happened to me, because you have to develop new skills. If you say yes and then if you're in the practice of doing, I think Richard Branson said it, of saying yes and figuring out how to do it later. Just say yes and then sort out the details later, right? So that often leads to developing new skills, because you have to. It leads to the meeting of new people. It leads to new interests, and you end up expanding your knowledge, widening your circles, and widening your experience, expanding your experience. Something to keep in mind when you're saying yes is that for every yes, there's likely one or more no that is going to have to happen. So if I say yes to taking on being chair of this organization, when I said yes, I was going to have then a whole bunch of meetings that I had to attend. My email inbox exploded. I had much less time to do some of the other things that I like to do. And so ultimately, I had to say no to some things as a result of saying yes to being the chair. But in this case, the yes outweighed the no, because the benefits I have received have been far greater than had I said no and not learned the things that I did. Or been able to work with the amazing team of people on the executive board that I chair, I've learned a lot from those people and made connections and relationships with those people. So my life is far richer for having said yes when I look back at it. So that is another thing to keep in mind, that you do say no, but it's a balancing, right? What outweighs it, and allowing things like fear alone to hold you back, or the mind that's trying to protect you, giving you all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't do it. If you can overcome that and say yes and step out, you'll stretch and grow and deepen as a person too. Not just your career, but your entire being. So that is the show for you this week. I hope you've been inspired by something that you've heard. I leave you with this question now. Where in your life can you say yes more? Because by saying yes, by taking the shot, you might just score that goal. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.